Hey Titans, this is Mordecai from GamerTitan.com. In this video, I'm going to be sharing how to collaborate as a team on Core using a program called GitHub. So the first thing you're going to need is to head over to github.com and you're going to want to create a new account. The second thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to go to desktop.github.com to download the GitHub desktop software. Now, some of you may already know how to use Git and you want to do it through the console. That's okay as well. I personally use the desktop just because that is what I've used so far. So after you've downloaded the GitHub desktop, what you'll want to do is go ahead and open it up here. And after finishing installation, it should look something like this. So the first thing you're going to want to do is go to File, go to Options, and under Accounts here, you're going to want to sign in to github.com. So go ahead and click Sign In. It's going to ask you to continue with browser. Now, if you are logged in on your browser to the account that you just created, you just click Continue with browser and then open desktop, GitHub desktop, and it automatically logs you in. So we have the basics set up. Our GitHub application, our GitHub desktop is connected to our online repository on Git. I'm going to go and close this out. And to give just a brief explanation of what GitHub is, GitHub has what's called repositories. So it allows you to work on a local branch and so or a local repository and make changes and save your changes throughout your work that can then be seen when you push it to the online repository, and your other teammates can actually see what changes you've made. So if that doesn't make too much sense right now, let's just continue going through this and then I'll try and explain it a little bit in more detail. So we're going to go ahead and open up Core real quick. And what I did was I made a project. I just pulled the survival starter kit from community projects. So what I'll do is I'll just go to edit real quick just to show you. And this is the exact project that you can actually pull right now. So everything's there. So we'll go ahead and save it. It's already up to date. We'll close it out. And so now what we're going to want to do is open up the GitHub desktop again. And we're going to want to actually create a repository in that project. So with Core, because we've already created the project, what we're going to want to do is add an existing repository from your hard drive. So this button right here, if for whatever reason you're not on the Let's Get Started page, you could also do it from up here, I believe. New repository. No, that's not what we need. I'm not sure how to get there. Maybe it's this one. Okay, so it's add local repository. So either button is the same. So add an existing repository from your hard drive. And so what we're going to want to do is click on choose, and the folder that we want to select is, by default, Core stores all of your map folders in Documents, My Games, Core, Saved Maps. So this is the project that we're wanting to set the repository up on. And so this is Survival Starter Kit. So we just select this folder, make sure it's highlighted, and click Select Folder. And now it says this directory does not appear to be a Git repository. Would you like to create a repository here instead? And this is what you want to do. So you click on Create Repository, this blue text right here, and it automatically names it. And so there's a few more advanced options that you could do, but just for the basics of this video, we're just going to go ahead and click on Create Repository. So what it's doing is it's going through all the files in the project and it's doing the initial commit. So what that means is that we've now stored locally as in on our machine, a new commit. So if we go to history, we can see that here's my account. I've committed all of this stuff here. And these are all green because these are all files that are added, which means it's just simply the entire project. So to give a demonstration now, if I go back into the project and I add something new, so say I just add a ball to the project and then I save it, save as complete. I go to GitHub, and you'll see that I have 2 changed files. Now, I could commit these files by, these are both checked, and under summary here, I can name what this commit is. So I could do added ball, and I could commit it. So when I commit it, if I go to history here, I now have a new commit, and I've added the ball. So the power of GitHub is if I needed to, I could revert back to this commit. So say that for whatever reason, adding that ball messed up the project, or we didn't actually want to move forward with having that ball in town, then we could revert it and go back to a previous state of the project prior to having that ball added. Now, because we haven't pushed this for the rest of our team to see, we can actually click undo as well. And then by undoing it, it reverts it back, and then we can actually right click on these changed files here and click discard all changes. And now if we go back into the project, if we exit out and click edit again, the ball shouldn't be there because we reverted back to a previous state. So as you can see, it's not in our hierarchy, it's not in town. So that is the power of GitHub in terms of locally being able to have revision control if something gets messed up or you actually don't want to move forward with a particular change. So the other thing to note is right now, the repository is only locally on our computer. And so other team members can't actually see the repository. And so if I refresh here, I believe I'm actually in the wrong. Okay. So what I can do is, before I do any more local commits, what I'm going to do is I'm going to publish the repository. And because this is the first time I'm doing it, this is the name of the repository that's going to be online. So this is what your other team members will see. And in most cases, you'll want to keep this code private. So by keeping it private, only people that are invited to the team or the repository will be able to have access to it. If you uncheck this box, the repository will be public, and anyone that either knows the name of this repository or has access to your profile could actually pull the entire repository, as in have access to your entire project. So if you're just doing this to make a private game, be sure to keep this code private, and we'll go ahead and publish it. Now what this is doing is it's publishing all of our commits to GitHub's website, and any team member, like I said, that is connected to this repository could then do a pull. So if we go back to our account here and we refresh, actually we gotta go to our repositories. You can see that 13 seconds ago, I pushed the survival starter kit and it's private. So on the actual GitHub site, if I wanted to add another team member, I could go to settings and I could go to manage access and I can invite a collaborator. So to invite an actual collaborator, all you would need to know is your other team member's email or username on GitHub. And you would just click invite collaborator and search by their email or name. And then when you find the appropriate account, you would just select them and then add them as a collaborator. And that would allow them to access this repository on their end. So I know I'm a little bit all over the place. GitHub is a little complicated for a lot of people just getting started. I know it definitely was for me. So I am going to share a few things that are kind of gotchas by using Core. So the one thing you want to note is when you have multiple artists and multiple people working on a project, if you're doing everything in the default tree, so this is the default tree right here, as in like if I add a ball again to this, if I'm working in the project and I add something to just the hierarchy right here and no folder, and I try and commit this at the same time that someone else added something to the hierarchy or made an edit to the hierarchy, there will be what's called a merge conflict. And merge conflicts mean that two of the same file was edited at the same time, and a merge conflict means that the project will essentially be broken. So to mitigate that, Core has what's called folders. So folders, each folder has its own tree. And so as you can see in this project, this is actually one that was built by a team, and you can see that everything is broken up by folders. So as an example, under gameplay systems here, everything, all the various systems, or at least the majority of them, are under folders, which is this icon here. So if someone is working in a folder, so say that someone's working under gameplay systems in the crafting system, as long as someone's working under this particular folder and someone else is working under, say, the stamina folder, both of them can be making changes as long as they stay inside of that particular folder. And if they both commit at the same time, because each folder has a separate tree, there won't be a merge conflict. So there's a few options you can do. You're kind of going to have to work with your team to figure out the best option for you. I've seen some teams actually make an individual folder for each person. So as an example, you could have folder Brent, which is my name, or you can use the your core usernames, whatever. And then as another example, say that there's then Mordecai. So obviously both of these folders are named for me, but essentially pretend that Brent was a separate person than Mordecai. Brent here could do all of Brent's work in this folder and be safe to add new things. So like if I added the ball under Brent's folder, then there will be no merge conflict if Mordecai was only working under Mordecai's folder. So you just got to work with your team to figure out the best way. I highly recommend, at a bare minimum, having everyone have their own folder. And then even inside of a particular folder, it's good to split up your project of major components, or perhaps like someone is in charge of doing the terrain and props, and other people are in charge of doing other types of art like costumes and stuff like that. It would be good to have each artist have a separate folder and be sure that they're working in their own folder. And then if for whatever reason the two artists do need to work on something that the other did, they need to communicate that and be sure that only one of them makes a change to that folder, pushes it, and the other pulls it to actually get that latest copy. So to share this, I'm gonna go ahead and save this real quick. And once it's saved complete, we're gonna see that it changed a lot of stuff. Now, one other thing to note is by adding a folder, you are actually editing still the main tree. So only simply adding the folder. Once the folder is there and everyone has access to it and their project, then you're good to go. So what I mean by that is be sure that you add these folders early, and be sure that everyone is on the same version of the project that has access to all these folders. That way everyone can actually work in their folders. And so what I mean by that is if everyone tries to start adding their folders and they all push at the same time, you're technically editing the master tree or the main tree. I'm not sure the actual terminology for it. The main tree, and it would cause a merge conflict. So one of the first things you want to do, whoever is in charge on your team to do that initial commit, be sure to set up the folders that you think your team will need. And then if they ever need to add more folders later, be sure that everyone is waiting for one person to add those folders, do the push, and then the others can pull it. So I know there's probably going to be a lot of questions on this, so please leave them in the comments down below. And I could definitely try and go into more details on anything that was unclear or just simply didn't make sense. So now that I saved those changes, what I could do is I could commit it. So one other thing I do want to share though is it's always best under these change files before you do a commit is to click stash all changes. Now be very careful because discard all changes will literally wipe out all the changes that you just did, but stash all changes, what it'll do is it'll put it in a stash. So now you can go here, view stash, and restore. And the reason I do this is because sometimes when you save, GitHub will determine that you've changed a lot of things that you didn't based on timestamps. And when you stash the changes like that and then restore them, it gets rid of the timestamped version saves, and it only finds the files that actually were changed by you. So sometimes when I do a save in Core, I'll have like 900 files that I changed when I really only changed 1 or 2 files. To get rid of that, or at least clean up the majority of those files, you stash and then click View Stash, Restore. The other thing is if there is, for whatever reason, a file that is still under this change files log here that you didn't actually change, you could actually uncheck it before you do your commit. So one that actually has this issue a lot, it didn't actually appear this time, but the terrain in a project usually will show up as a change. So I'll often see, as the programmer on my team, that I made changes to the terrain when I didn't, even after stashing the changes and restoring them. And so I simply have to remember to uncheck anything that's like terrain or anything that I didn't make a change to. So I'll go ahead and check that again, because that is something that I did change. And what I'll do is I'll do added folders, and then I could commit this. So once again, when you do a commit right here, this is only locally. And so you'll notice that there's now this push to origin, and there's one change. So what I could do is I could go ahead and push this. And because no one else is working on this project, there won't be any merge conflicts or anything, but I can go back to my repository. I could refresh, and if I click on commits, you can see that I did my initial commit 13 minutes ago, and then 28 seconds ago, I added a folder here. So there's one more thing to take note of. There's also what's called branches. So branches allow you to make changes in your own separate version and then merge them together when you're finally able, or you're finally ready to actually push it to the main. So to make a new branch, you click this current branch and click new branch. And then what we'll do is we'll call it development, and we'll create this new branch. And so it's actually creating it off of main, meaning it basically cloned main. And so now we have the development branch. So it's good practice to have a development branch, and this is where everyone should work off of. And then what main will be is the actual live version of your game. So say that you have pushed the game, it's live on Core, and there's a bug fix that you need to do. But currently in development, you've made a bunch of changes to the project that you're not ready to actually push. So what you could do is you could actually go into main and make the edit there and do the hotfix and have just that hotfix in for the live version of your game, while still working on the development features that aren't ready to be pushed to the project. So to give an example of how to actually do a merge, we're going to go back into the Core editor, and we're just going to add some more stuff real quick. Now, once again, don't actually add stuff directly to the hierarchy. So I'll do is I'll just go ahead and slap this under the Brent folder again, and I'll save it. Save is complete, so I could go back to the GitHub desktop. And once again, I'm going to go ahead and stash all my changes. Go to View Stash, restore it. And as you can see, it brought it from 5 files that it thought that I changed down to 1. So that's why I do the stash and unstash. So now what we're going to do is we're going to say added ball, and we're going to commit this to development. And now we can hop between these. So on development, those new objects are in the project, but on main, they still aren't. So say that we were ready to actually merge our changes from development. We've used it as we've actually tested our changes. Everything seems to be working. So what we would do is we'd actually switch to the main branch here. And while we're in main, what we would do is choose a branch to merge into main. And so what we would do is click on development, and you can see that there's one commit from development that we're going to merge into main. It has this green checkbox, which means there's no merge conflicts, which means the project should be safe to merge in. Now this is where you're going to see if there is an actual merge conflict, by the way. Like it'll have a red X if there is an issue. And I will make future videos on potential ways to fix that, because merge conflicts do happen and they are quite stressful, to be completely honest. So what we're going to do is, because there is no merge conflict, we're going to merge development into main. And now when we go into main and we click on history, we can see that there's this new commit. And it's basically that I merged the commit that I did in development over to main. And so I could push this. And then we'll go back to the online editor. We'll refresh. And I committed. Even though I made the change in the development branch, because I merged it, it is now on the main. Now, one other thing I should have noted is you will want to also publish your development branch. So we'll go ahead and publish that real quick. And the reason for that is it'll give your entire team access to this development branch as well. So now if we go back to the editor, refresh one more time, we can see that this is, it says main right here. This is the branch selector. And so now we have development right here. So development is exactly the same as main, because we already committed and merged our changes and committed them. So these two branches are exactly the same. So I'm going to show you one more thing that is kind of my workflow when I get started each day. So if your entire team is working in the development branch, so right here, if someone makes changes to the repository, when you click on fetch origin, if there's a new change that someone else pushed while you were sleeping or taking a break or whatever, it'll have a down arrow, meaning that there was changes to development while you were gone. So what you'll always want to do is you'll always want to pull the latest changes. That way you're up to date with your team on what they're working on. And then once you've done that, what I do is I make one more branch that I never actually push to the website. So for example, I have development, so I'll create new branch. And now because we have two main branches, you'll want to base this branch, this new branch, off of whichever of the primary branches you're working off of. So in this example, we'll be working off of development, and say that I was going to be adding new weapons, and that was what I was working on for the day. So what I would do is I would make a new branch called feature new weapons, and I would create this branch. So this branch is the latest version of development. And so I could be working, as long as I'm working in my folder, like I explained, and as I'm making changes, I can be committing them locally as I'm working. And then before merging my changes into development, I would switch back to development one more time right before I'm ready to merge my changes. And I would fetch origin again and make sure that no one else, as I was working on my branch, made changes to development. And if they did, I would go ahead and pull those changes. That way, once again, I'm at the latest version of development. And then while still in development, I then would click on merge into development and merge my changes from the branch that I was working on. And obviously I haven't made any changes, so this branch is still up to date with development. And that's the main thing that you need to know, is it's best practice to be working in your own local branch. That way, if there is a merge conflict, you and your team can still have access to your changes and still have the working copy of development. That way you could be figuring out how, what file got changed or what one is having the merge conflict. And if there is a merge conflict and your team needs access to it to try and determine what was actually changed, you could then push your local branch once again, so the rest of your team can have access to the changes that you're working on and kind of figure out what went wrong. So once again, we'll go back to the website, we'll refresh one more time, and we'll see that we now have another branch called featured new weapons. So hopefully that was helpful. Once again, if there's any questions, I know GitHub's complicated, so don't feel, too intimidated to ask any questions. There's no stupid question. I try to do my best to explain this. GitHub's a bit complicated, especially with working with Core, So if there's any questions or confusions, please leave them in the comments down below, and I'll try and make more videos on GitHub specifically with some better examples of how to avoid certain situations or how me and my team actually work together using GitHub, because I was kind of in my own profile, and it obviously would be better to see when other changes are being pushed from someone else to kind of determine what to do there. Once again, if you want more core-related content, please hit that subscribe button. It definitely helps me out. If you liked this video, go ahead and hit that thumbs up button. And as always, I'll catch you next time, Titans.